What if I told you that Egypt is building an entirely new capital city in the desert? A megacity designed for 6.5 million people, larger than Singapore, rising from absolutely nothing. It sounds like science fiction, right? Well, Egypt is actually doing this, and the scale is so massive that it makes Dubai look like a practice run. This isn't renovation. This isn't expansion. This is creating one of the world's largest cities from scratch in one of the harshest environments on Earth. And after 8 years of construction, the results are absolutely stunning. This is that incredible story. To understand why Egypt would attempt something this insane, we need to look at Cairo. Cairo isn't just crowded. It's one of the most densely populated cities on the planet. Picture this. Over 22 million people crammed into a space designed for maybe 5 million. The population density in some neighborhoods exceeds 100,000 people per square kilometer. That's more than Manhattan. That's more than Hong Kong. That's suffocating. The infrastructure simply can't cope. Traffic in Cairo is legendary for all the wrong reasons. The average commute takes 2 hours each way. During rush hour, the entire city grinds to a standstill. Roads built for 1 million cars somehow handle 5 million. Public transportation is overwhelmed. Metro trains are so packed that people literally cannot board during peak hours. The economic cost? An estimated $8 billion annually in lost productivity, just from traffic congestion. But traffic is just the beginning. Cairo's sewage system was built in the 1960s for a fraction of today's population. Now it's collapsing. During heavy rains, entire neighborhoods flood with sewage. The water supply struggles to reach everyone. Air pollution levels regularly exceed WHO safety limits by 400%. The city is literally choking itself. Housing has become a crisis of unimaginable proportions. Approximately 60% of Cairo's buildings are technically illegal, constructed without proper permits on agricultural land because there's simply nowhere else to build. Slums have expanded across the city. Families live in cemeteries, yes, actual graveyards, because they can't afford or find housing anywhere else. The City of the Dead, as it's called, houses over 1 million people among the tombs. The government tried everything. They built new suburbs, they expanded public transportation, they widened roads. Nothing worked. The population kept growing, the infrastructure kept deteriorating. And every solution was just a temporary patch on a system that was fundamentally broken. By 2010, Egyptian officials faced an uncomfortable truth. Cairo couldn't be saved through renovation. The city had reached a terminal point. You can't rebuild a city of 22 million while people are living in it. You can't upgrade infrastructure that's already beyond capacity. The only solution was radical. Build a new city. Not a suburb, not an extension, a completely new capital. But not everyone agreed this was the answer. When President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi announced the new administrative capital project in March 2015, the reaction was swift and brutal. Critics called it pharaoh's folly, comparing it to ancient Egypt's megalomaniacal building projects. Economists said Egypt couldn't afford it. Urban planners said it wouldn't work. International media predicted disaster. The skepticism was understandable. Egypt's economy was struggling. Unemployment was high. The country had just gone through political upheaval, and now the government wanted to spend tens of billions building a city in the desert. It seemed insane. Dr. David Sims, author of Understanding Cairo, wrote, "Building a new capital 45 kilometers into the desert when Cairo already has massive empty land within its boundaries is urban planning at its most absurd. This will create a ghost city while Cairo's actual problems remain unsolved. The government is running away from Cairo rather than fixing it." The criticism hit hard. Would people actually move to a desert city? Would businesses relocate? Would foreign investors support it? Or would Egypt spend $58 billion creating the world's most expensive ghost town? But President el-Sisi was determined. His vision was clear. Create a modern planned city with world-class infrastructure. A city that could attract international business. A city that could demonstrate Egypt's capability for the 21st century. A city that could finally relieve the pressure on Cairo and give Egypt a fresh start. The statistics of the project were staggering. The new administrative capital would cover 700 square kilometers, about the size of Singapore. It would house 6.5 million people. It would include the world's largest park, the world's largest cathedral, one of the world's largest mosques, and Africa's tallest building. The government district alone would be larger than Washington, D.C.'s entire federal zone. And the timeline. Egypt planned to complete the first phase, enough to start relocating government ministries, within just 5 years. What took Brasilia 10 years, what took Dubai 30 years, Egypt wanted to do in half the time. Construction began in 2016, and immediately the challenges were overwhelming. The location, 45 kilometers east of Cairo, was empty desert. No water, no electricity, no roads. Summer temperatures regularly exceeded 45 degrees C, 113 degrees C. Sandstorms could shut down work for days. The site had to be leveled, utilities installed, and basic infrastructure created before actual building could begin. The logistics were nightmarish. At peak construction, over 40,000 workers were on site simultaneously. Materials had to be transported across the desert, millions of tons of concrete, steel, and glass. Water for construction alone required massive pipelines from the Nile. The electrical infrastructure had to be built from scratch, including substations and transmission lines. And then there was the technical challenge. Building in desert sand is fundamentally different from building on solid ground. Foundations had to go much deeper. Special concrete mixtures were required to handle extreme temperature fluctuations. Every building needed advanced cooling systems just to be habitable. Engineers were basically inventing solutions as problems appeared. The first year was brutal. Sandstorms damaged equipment. Heat exhaustion affected workers. Supply chains struggled. International observers predicted the project would quietly die, abandoned like so many other grandiose Middle Eastern plans. Nobody believed Egypt could actually pull this off. But Egypt had something critics didn't anticipate: China. In 2017, the China State Construction Engineering Corporation signed massive contracts to build the new capital's central business district. This wasn't charity, this was strategic investment. China saw Egypt's new capital as a crucial piece of its Belt and Road initiative. The location, linking Africa to Asia through the Suez Canal, was too valuable to ignore. Chinese investment brought something beyond money: expertise and speed. Chinese construction companies had built entire cities in record time across China. They brought that methodology to Egypt: prefabricated components, streamlined supply chains, round-the-clock construction schedules. Suddenly, buildings were rising at incredible speed. By 2019, the transformation was visible from space. Satellite imagery showed a city materializing in the desert. The Oblisco Capital Business District began taking shape. 20 towers, including the iconic Oblisco Tower, designed to be Africa's tallest building at 385 meters with 60 floors. The government district emerged. Massive administrative buildings, parliament, presidential palace, all designed with striking modern architecture. The scale continued to expand beyond initial plans. The Green River Park, conceived as Africa's largest urban park, was taking form, stretching 35 kilometers, 3 times the size of New York's Central Park. This wasn't just landscaping, it was creating an entire ecosystem. Over 8 million trees and plants were being installed. Artificial lakes were created. The park would feature botanical gardens, museums, sports facilities, and recreational areas that could serve millions. Transportation infrastructure was equally ambitious. A new electric train system was under construction. Not just light rail, but a comprehensive network connecting the new capital to Cairo, with 22 stations spanning 103 kilometers. The train would travel at 120 kilometers per hour, cutting the commute from hours to just 45 minutes. Additionally, a monorail system would connect to Cairo International Airport, solving one of Egypt's most persistent infrastructure problems. The residential districts were designed with lessons learned from Cairo's failures. Wide boulevards, extensive green spaces, modern sewage and water systems, underground utilities to avoid the chaotic overhead wiring that plagues old Cairo. Each neighborhood had schools, healthcare facilities, and commercial zones within walking distance, creating a city designed for livability, not just density. By 2020, something remarkable happened. The first residents began moving in. Government employees were offered apartments in the new capital. The Ministry of Housing was the first to relocate. Then came the Ministry of Finance. By 2021, multiple ministries had begun operations from the new city. This wasn't a ghost town. People were actually living and working there. The economic impact started becoming visible. Real estate values in the new capital skyrocketed. International companies began establishing regional headquarters. The Oblisco Tower attracted tenants before construction was even complete. Banks, tech companies, consulting firms all wanted prestigious addresses in Africa's newest business hub. Cairo University announced plans for a massive new campus. Museums and cultural institutions committed to branches in the city, but critics still had doubts. Yes, government employees were relocating, but only because they had no choice. Would ordinary Egyptians actually want to live there? Would the private sector really invest when Cairo was still the economic center? Was this creating two Egypts, one modern and planned, one chaotic and neglected? These questions started getting answered in 2022. Private residential compounds began selling out. Not slowly, not reluctantly, they were in high demand. Why? Because Egyptians who could afford it desperately wanted what the new capital offered: functioning infrastructure, clean air, manageable traffic, modern schools, and reliable utilities. These weren't luxuries in Dubai or Singapore. These were basics that Cairo couldn't provide. The construction numbers told their own story. By 2023, the new capital had completed over 50,000 residential units. The central business district was 70% finished. The diplomatic district, designed to house embassies and international organizations, was operational. And the iconic Cathedral of the Nativity, the largest cathedral in the Middle East, was consecrated alongside the Al-Fatah Al-Alim Mosque, one of the world's largest mosques. These weren't just buildings, they were statements of Egypt's ambition. International recognition followed. The new capital won awards for sustainable urban planning. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, and even European companies invested in development projects. The World Bank, initially skeptical, revised its assessments, acknowledging that the project was generating significant economic activity and employment. An estimated 2 million jobs were created directly or indirectly by the construction. The technology integration was equally impressive. The new capital was designed as a smart city from the ground up. Integrated traffic management systems to prevent Cairo-style gridlock, smart grids for electricity distribution, comprehensive fiber optic networks, digital government services, automated waste management. This wasn't retrofitting old infrastructure. This was building 21st century systems from scratch. Environmental systems were considered from day one. Despite being in the desert, the new capital incorporated extensive water recycling. Treated wastewater would irrigate the parks and green spaces. Solar panels were integrated into building designs. The city's orientation and building heights were calculated to optimize natural ventilation and reduce cooling costs. Remarkably, the new capital was designed to be more sustainable than most existing cities. By 2024, 8 years after construction began, the impossible was happening. A megacity existed where there had been only desert. The Oblisco Tower dominated the skyline, 385 meters tall, its distinctive design visible from 50 kilometers away. The governmental quarter was fully operational. The diplomatic district housed embassies from dozens of countries. Residential neighborhoods were bustling with life. The Green River Park was attracting weekend visitors from Cairo. The economic transformation was undeniable. The new capital was generating 2% of Egypt's GDP despite housing less than 1% of its population. Real estate investment had exceeded $10 billion. international business conventions were booking venues in the new city. Tech startups were establishing offices to take advantage of modern infrastructure and streamlined regulations. The city was becoming an economic engine. But perhaps most telling was Cairo itself. Rather than being abandoned, Cairo was breathing. With government functions relocated, vast areas of central Cairo became available for redevelopment. Traffic improved as hundreds of thousands of government workers no longer commuted into the city centre. The pressure on housing markets eased. Cairo could finally address its infrastructure because the system wasn't operating beyond capacity every single day. This wasn't zero-sum. Both cities were benefiting. The new capital provided what Cairo couldn't: modern infrastructure, planned development, room to grow. Cairo maintained what made it special: history, culture, established communities. Together, they formed a dual city system that could handle Egypt's growing population and economy. The project's financial reality also shifted. Initial estimates put total costs at $58 billion, a staggering sum for Egypt. Critics predicted bankruptcy, but the reality proved different. Private investment covered approximately 60% of costs. International partnerships provided favorable financing. Revenue from land sales, real estate development, and business taxes created positive cash flow earlier than expected. By 2024, the project was on track to break even within 15 years, remarkable for infrastructure development. International attention intensified. Countries across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East sent delegations to study the new capital. Kenya announced plans for a new capital city. Nigeria revisited proposals for Abuja expansion. Indonesia confirmed its new capital project in Borneo, explicitly citing Egypt's success as proof that massive relocation could work. The new capital had become a global case study. The human stories were equally compelling. Families who moved from Cairo's crowded apartments into modern new capital homes spoke of transformative quality of life improvements. Children who walked to school safely. Commutes measured in minutes rather than hours. Reliable electricity and water. Clean air. These weren't luxuries. These were basic dignities that millions of Egyptians had been denied. Critics who predicted ghost towns were proven wrong by simple metrics. Occupancy rates exceeded 80% in completed residential areas. Schools were at capacity. Healthcare facilities were busy. Retail spaces were rented. The city wasn't just built, it was inhabited. The infrastructure wasn't just impressive, it was being used. Yet challenges remained. The cost of living in the new capital was higher than Cairo. By design, to create a modern, well-maintained city, this created concerns about inequality. Would the new capital become an enclave for the wealthy, while most Egyptians remained in struggling Cairo? The government addressed this by including significant amounts of middle-class housing and subsidized units for relocated government workers. But the question of accessibility remained important. Transportation integration was also ongoing. While the electric train would eventually connect the cities seamlessly until completion, the 45-kilometer distance remained significant. Daily commuting between cities wasn't practical yet. This created some separation between the new capital and Cairo's economic activity. However, as more businesses relocated, this gap was expected to close. The project also faced environmental questions. Creating a city in the desert required massive water resources. Where would 6.5 million people get water in one of the world's driest regions? Egypt's answer combined multiple sources: Nile water transported via pipeline, extensive water recycling systems, and long-term plans for desalination plants on the Red Sea coast. Critics noted this was energy-intensive, but supporters argued it was more efficient than trying to supply Cairo's chaotic sprawl. Looking forward, the new capital's development continues. Phase 2. Construction includes expansion of residential areas, additional commercial districts, and cultural institutions. The Egyptian Museum is planning a branch facility. International universities are establishing campuses. Tech companies are building research centers. The city is evolving beyond just administrative capital. into a comprehensive urban center. The success has sparked broader discussions about urban planning in the developing world. For decades, the conventional wisdom was that megacities like Cairo, Lagos, or Manila were too far gone, that managing their growth was the best possible outcome. Egypt's new capital challenged that assumption. Sometimes, radical solutions work. Sometimes building new, instead of endlessly patching old, is the right answer. Economic forecasts project that by 2030, the new capital will house 3 million residents and contribute 7% to Egypt's GDP. By 2050, full development would see 6.5 million residents and become Egypt's primary economic center. These aren't fantasies anymore. They're projections based on current growth rates and investment trends. The impossible is becoming inevitable. The geopolitical implications are also significant. Egypt's new capital positions the country as Africa's gateway to Asian investment. The Belt and Road connections run directly through it. The Suez Canal, already crucial, becomes even more strategic with a modern megacity nearby. Egypt isn't just building a city, it's repositioning itself for the 21st century. International investors who initially scoffed are now competing for opportunities. American firms, initially absent, are now seeking contracts. European companies are investing in renewable energy projects for the city. Japanese corporations are bringing smart city technologies. The new capital has become a proving ground for urban innovation, attracting the world's leading companies. The technology sector sees particular potential. With modern infrastructure, stable electricity, and government incentives, the new capital is positioning itself as a regional tech hub. Startups that might have gone to Dubai or Nairobi are considering Egypt. Data centers are being built. Fiber optic infrastructure rivals anywhere in the world. The city is being wired for the digital economy. Perhaps the most profound impact is psychological. For decades, Egyptians watched other countries, particularly Gulf states, build gleaming modern cities while Cairo crumbled. There was a sense of decline, of being left behind by progress. The new capital changed that narrative. Egypt proved it could execute at the highest level. It could build infrastructure that worked. It could create something world-class. This confidence is tangible in Egyptian society. Young professionals speak about staying in Egypt rather than emigrating. Entrepreneurs launch businesses confident in improving infrastructure. International Egyptians consider returning. The new capital isn't just changing where people live, it's changing how Egyptians see their country's future. The project's completion timeline extends through 2050, but already it stands as one of the 21st century's most significant urban achievements. What seemed impossible in 2015, building a megacity in the desert, is now an undeniable reality. The skyline exists. The parks are green. The streets are busy. The city lives. The new administrative capital proves that the world's most daunting urban challenges aren't insurmountable. That emerging economies can execute projects rivaling anything in the developed world. That sometimes bold vision and massive investment can reshape national futures. That the impossible is just the difficult that nobody's had the courage to attempt. So what can we learn from Egypt's gamble on a desert megacity? Perhaps that incremental solutions to catastrophic problems rarely work. That transformative challenges require transformative responses. That building new, when done right, isn't running away from problems. It's creating space to solve them properly. Egypt didn't fix Cairo by endlessly patching it. Egypt fixed Cairo by giving it room to breathe. What other cities might benefit from Egypt's radical approach? Where else are we accepting dysfunction as inevitable when bold alternatives exist? The new administrative capital challenges us to think bigger about urban problems, because sometimes the most practical solution is also the most audacious. And sometimes, building a city in the desert isn't insane. Accepting permanent dysfunction is.